But I'm a firm believer of the fact that education and qualification are two very different things. And I think what you end up undergoing until your postgrad state is mostly qualification. Education truly starts after that. I got placed for my summer internship with one of the finest brands, which was Coke, right? So suddenly people start looking around and realize, who's this guy, from Bhopal, who just got placed with Coke. I think it is unfortunate, but then we live in a world which is where you're measured by labels. I always try to make decisions which opens up more and more doors for me. And I felt, moving to Dubai was possibly shutting down a lot of doors for me at the age of 30. And that's when, possibly virtually on a whim, I decided, to quit and do my own business, by the way. Us time pe business hota tha, startup nahi hota tha. Well, I could have done premium personal care. I could have sold fancy shampoos, right? I could have possibly sold fancy innerwear. But I don't think those are consumer needs. They are consumer wants, right? And to convert a want into a purchase, you have to spend marketing dollars. Whereas if you cater a product which caters to consumer need, you don't necessarily need to spend marketing dollars.
Performance marketing, e-commerce marketing, content marketing. Is this the world that you see yourself in? If you dream to work in these roles at Hindustan Unilever Limited, here's your chance. Apply to Altuni's certificate program in digital marketing with HUL. The participants achieved a return of 12 times the investment with an 80% average salary hike. Hurry up! Apply now to the program from the link in the description. Limited seats available.
It's possible that a lot of you already know him or his company, if you've actually seen Shark Tank. So he's a serial entrepreneur, has worked with large MNCs like Coca-Cola, Nokia, and now runs a very exciting, colorful, young, D2C company. So can I, without any further delay, invite Anish on stage. A big round of applause, guys. So Anish, thank you so much for making it. So Anish, why don't you tell us about your early life?
So yeah, Bhopal is where I did most of my schooling. I started in this fantastic school called Campion School, the best boys' school in town. What was very interesting is by the time I started going towards class 11, 12, I started assuming a lot of leadership responsibilities. I was school captain in 12th. And then obviously you have to do your graduation as well.
So what stream did you graduate in?
I wanted to do eco honors, and I got through Kirorimal. I got through Hindu in Delhi University. I had almost joined, but I was kind of, I would say, marginally brainwashed into believing that engineering was a lot more valuable.
Ghum fir ke the same story.
So yeah, North Campus bye-bye. So I came back to Bhopal, did my engineering from the government engineering college there. But I think life realities back then were very, very different. Guys, I'm 40, right? So whatever I'm talking about is like 20 years ago, right? उस time पे सच में arts वालों को नौकरी नहीं लगती थी यार. Eco honors had no options. Life is very, very different now. Yeah, that was it. And then obviously always wanted to do an MBA. So graduation for me was always a stepping stone to eventually what I wanted to do. I think even during my school days, I was pretty clear that, business is what excited me and management is where my true calling lay. So yeah, wrote CAT, wrote ZAT and all those exams, did a bunch of fuck-ups, went to SCMHRD, learned a bunch of things. But I'm a firm believer of the fact that education and qualification are two very different things. And I think what you end up undergoing until your postgrad state is mostly qualification. Education truly starts after that.
SCMHRD would have been a different experience given that you would be thrown into a more diverse mix of people, both in terms of people coming from different disciplines and people from different parts of India. And this was like, I think you were there around mid-2000s. So what was life like back then? How was B School? Do you look back at it? And what comes to your mind?
Okay, I'm going to stand and talk.
Sure, feel free.
I think I'm a lot more comfortable that way. Culture shock. Imagine a kid who's grown up in Bhopal, spent a lot of time in Bhopal, Suddenly when you land up in Pune and you realize that you're surrounded by some of the smartest kids from all across the country, not just in terms of their academic pursuits, but then the amount of talent that they possess, right? I think the first 6 months, I still remember, I went through, I don't even know whether to call it depression or not, but the first 6 months were tough, right? Because suddenly from being one of the best in a small town, being thrown into a much larger pool, where you're surrounded by people who have far, far richer experience than you do, it can be pretty unwieldy, right? So I think the first 6 months were difficult, but then managed. I think what turned things around for me, to a very large extent, was sticking to my strengths, right? So public speaking is something that I've done for a lifetime now. What eventually helped me find my footing amongst a far more talented group of people was my public speaking skills. And I think what really turned things around for me was the fact that I got placed for my summer internship with one of the finest brands, which was Coke, right? So suddenly people start looking around and realize, who's this guy, from Bhopal, who just got placed with Coke. I think it is unfortunate, but then we live in a world which is where you're measured by labels. But that's the hard fact and hard reality of life.
Yeah, I mean, even you're branding a brand for the same reason, right?
Yeah, I think first 6 months were difficult for sure. I still remember that being
interestingly, you worked in sales and not in HR. And there is this perception that SCMHRD at least used to be primarily known for HR, although I think there are all kinds of roles available there. Did you ever think about HR when you were on campus, when you were joining, or you were very clear you were going to get into marketing or sales?
I'm sure a lot of you were not even born back then, but then I was possibly the first one to read about the word pivot back in the early 2005, 2006 kind of a era, right? Okay, my life is full of pivots, by the way. And for me, one of the biggest learnings that I've possibly gathered over the last 20 years or so is that always be unafraid to pivot. Not many people know I went into SCMHRD because I wanted to pursue a career in HR. Why I wanted to pursue a career in HR is also a very interesting decision, right? And this is something that I did against possibly my parents' advice. I wanted to pursue a career in HR because until then, my exposure to the corporate world was interning as an engineering intern with certain companies, right? And when you go in as an intern, as an engineering intern, you always believe that the HR guy is the most powerful one because that's what your exposure is limited to. So yeah, I wanted to do my master's in HR as well. That was the first pivot, by the way. And just when I thought that I'm good at sales, I'm going to cut out my career in sales. The natural hierarchy and the path ahead of you is set, right? You want to become national sales manager of some company. You eventually want to become possibly a CEO, but then, you want to climb up the ladder doing sales and distribution. That's when life presented me with a very interesting opportunity when I was with Nokia, right? And our country head back then, put me in a team where we were responsible for setting up the enterprise sales business for Nokia in India. And I asked a very clear question. I have no experience in enterprise sales. Why do you even want me to go in that direction? I think I was just told, I think you're a creative guy, you'll manage. Well, I did manage. I think it was a very interesting stint. 2 years that I ran that business, it was a $70 million business. I think I owe my entrepreneurship experience to that stint because that stint possibly made me realize that I had it in me to build something from scratch. And possibly if I had shied away from taking that adventure or that pivot, I wouldn't be here speaking to you.
And you did spend like 2-3 years in Coke, right?
4 years Coke, 4 years Nokia.
So what were the learnings during those days first? We'll come to Nokia. But at Coke, what are some of the things that you learned about India or about markets or about marketing, sales that have stayed with you?
My experience with Coke, with Nokia, and possibly even with Shotang, my previous venture. I'm a strong believer of the fact that more than functional learning, what matters a lot more is cultural learning. Interestingly, I have lived in every state capital of the country. When I say lived, I have lived, right? Not been there. I've lived in all state capitals of the country except for Patna, Lucknow, Ahmedabad, and the northeastern states. I think that cultural learning very early in my career is something that helped me along significantly. It helps you understand markets, it helps you understand cultures, it helps you understand people, it helps you broad base your insights about various markets and consumers. Yeah, so I think cultural learning is possibly what I still remember the most.
So how would you expect, say, a lot of us to go through that? Because obviously you had the opportunity because of your dad's movements across the country, and obviously your sales stint. But today, for example, if somebody wants to get cultural learnings, but does not get the opportunity to travel as much or live in that many places, how can we shortcut this learning in the current, given that internet has opened up so much?
So I've actually traveled across startup ecosystems across the world, including Tel Aviv, London, Berlin, and Palo Alto, and all these places. I learned one of my most interesting lessons about this aspect in Israel. In Israel, after the kids complete their mandatory conscription, right? And mandatory conscription is part of their schooling curriculum, right?
That's joining the army, for people who don't know.
Yeah, so everybody has to join the army for a 2-year period, right? So they don't technically have a high school funda, right? So they actually join the army and they undergo a certain kind of training, and it's mandatory for all kids. After undergoing that mandatory conscription period, right, 90% of the kids who actually grow up in Tel Aviv take a break here, right? And you will most likely find them in Himachal in India, or possibly Goa in India, or possibly somewhere in Europe. But they always make sure that they take out that 1 year as a gap year, and it has almost become acknowledged pattern, right? That an Israeli student is going to take a gap year, and all they do is travel. I think one of the big reasons why today Tel Aviv is the startup capital of the world is because of the willingness of people there to go out and travel, adventure, make their mistakes, learn from it, and possibly work on it. Might sound a little bold, but then I think it's something which is doable. I think after you finish your graduation, there's nothing wrong in taking a gap year. And I think you guys all live in an era where I feel it's something which will be appreciated. It'll look good on your CV, as long as you're doing constructive shit around it and not, wasting the year smoking up. But
so you're saying that Nokia was the place where the foundations of your entrepreneurship journey was set because of the opportunity that you got there. Did the startup idea happen when you were at Nokia? Was that the starting point? What was your first company about, and what were you making? How did it start?
I started up when startup word wasn't as fashionable, right? I think Flipkart had just about started. I started my first venture back in January 2013, right? I quit my corporate job in December 2012. I quit at a very interesting juncture because I was supposed to move to my next role in Dubai, managing the business for 5 of the lower Gulf countries. Technically my next legal entity has sent me the offer letter. I'm supposed to move. Amex is supposed to process my visa. I think at that juncture, I just decided to quit one day. Because what was very evident to me is that, the kind of money that was on offer, if I decided to go down that path, I would possibly be stuck, what do they call it? The corporate rat race forever. I was 30 back then. And I just felt this was possibly that tipping point where I needed to make that call. And I hate making decisions which close doors for me. I always try to make decisions which opens up more and more doors for me. And I felt, moving to Dubai was possibly shutting down a lot of doors for me at the age of 30. And that's when, possibly virtually on a whim, I decided, to quit and do my own business, by the way. Us time pe business hota tha, startup nahi hota tha. The startup idea and everything happened much later. I found my co-founder after I had quit, who happened to be an ex-colleague from Nokia. So Shotang was a very interesting business. We were basically the first tech-enabled retail distribution platform in India. We would enable traditional retailers to procure inventory, on our platform. Venture-funded business eventually. That's something that I exited in December 2017, dialed down for about a year and a half. And this year and a half was possibly the most exciting year and a half of my entire life.
This company that you ran for about 4 years, how did you get your first clients there? Which regions did you start from? I mean, if you're saying retailers, you are essentially digitizing inventory ordering for retailers. So how did you go about actually getting your first customers?
Again, for the sake of context, allow me to talk to you about the fact that 2013 smartphones weren't as ubiquitous as they are today. Most of the retailers didn't have smartphones, right? Internet access was possibly not as widespread or as regular as we expect it to be, right? Today, it was a completely different era. So yeah, we started with Bangalore, onboarding some of our first few retailers. What was interesting is that our choice of retailers at that point in time was governed by whether they had internet access or not. Because obviously we didn't have the capital to, kind of go and deploy hardware at their stores. And we chose to possibly pick up mobile handsets and accessories as a category of retail shops, primarily because those were the only retailers who had smartphones, at least 95% of them. The traditional Kirana store guy would not have a smartphone back then. Yeah, so your choices were driven by very, very different prerogatives. Digital payments, which is so mainstream today, we are habituated to it, didn't exist. We did a lot of path-breaking, cutting-edge tech work, including disbursing credit to retailers for the first time in India, authenticated by Aadhaar, in partnership with Capital Float. And we did all of this back in, 2015.
Why did you decide to exit it and sell it off or whatever?
Yeah, so as a company, we decided to pivot, right? And we wanted to focus away from the commerce part of the business and focus more on the logistics stack. And I think that's something which made a lot more sense for my co-founders to continue run the show. I wanted to pursue possibly other pursuits in life. That's when I came out. It was a fantastic journey running that company as co-founder, CEO for 5 years, building a team, from zero to about 500 people, 7-city operation.
So it's still existing.
So in fact, there's a transaction which is happening as we speak.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, very happy for that team. I decided to kind of dial down for some time, took a break for about a year and a half.
So what did you do in that 1.5 year?
I climbed 6 Himalayan peaks in 18 months.
Wow.
I learned boxing at the age of 37. I did about 38,000 kilometers on the road, camping outdoors with my SUV. I'm a very, very avid motorbiker. So I love, going out on my motorbikes all the time. Eventually, finally got back time, to get back to golf, which I couldn't make time for those 5 years. But most importantly, I think that year and a half made me realize that as fancy as running a venture-funded startup from the outside sounds like, it's like running a high-speed train. While you're on it, you don't even realize the speed at which you're going. You don't even feel the tiredness or the fatigue. It's only when you get off the train is when you realize that it takes a toll. So yeah, I think I used that year and a half, to kind of research what I wanted to do next, what I wanted to do with my life going ahead, making time for a lot of personal passions and checking off things off my bucket list with vengeance. Maybe that was my break year after my mandatory conscription.
And then you decided to come back and work for a firm rather than starting up immediately.
Yeah, so Tagz is something that I did, after that break.
So there's also some period where you're working with HealthifyMe.
Yeah,
right?
for a very, very brief period where I was basically helping them scale up a bunch of businesses internally.
Okay, so you're already thinking about your venture at the
Yes,
same
yes,
time.
yes, yes.
So how did the current business come into existence? What is the insight that led you to believe that, okay, this is what I want to go after?
There were a bunch of tech opportunities around for me to pursue. And tech has been the flavor of the season for a very, very long time now. But I decided I didn't want to do anything tech, right? Simply because tech is not my core competence. I still don't know how to code to save my life. And if I have to build something in tech, it will always mean that I will again have to hit the road, raise capital, build a team, potentially depend and lean on the team significantly to run and scale the business. I am a strong believer of the fact that, even before you think about product market fit, I think founder market fit is something which is very important, because if there is founder market fit, if the founder has core competence in that line of business, your chances of getting product market fit are much higher, and hence your chances of building a successful business are much higher. I'm basically a consumer brand guy, right? I've spent my lifetime doing consumer brands. So what was very clear is that I wanted to get back to consumer brands. What was very clear is that I didn't want to do a business which would operate on thin margins, right? Was very clear that wanted to operate something which had handsome gross margins, simply because, as a small business, your biggest defensibility is possibly gross margins. So which meant that I would have to do premium consumer brands, did deep research across various categories. Reason to choose food was possibly governed by the fact that I feel that India is still at least 10 to 15 years behind the rest of the world when it comes to innovation on food technology. I think there is clear opportunity to disrupt the market with innovative food products, which most of the large companies aren't doing. And I felt that the need for better food in India is an acutely felt need, right? Whereas, well, I could have done premium personal care. I could have sold fancy shampoos, right? I could have possibly sold fancy innerwear. But I don't think those are consumer needs. They are consumer wants, right? And to convert a want into a purchase, you have to spend marketing dollars. Whereas if you cater a product which caters to consumer need, you don't necessarily need to spend marketing dollars.
So how did you come up with this name and this product lineup and the consumer insight behind fitness and people wanting to snack healthily? I mean, what are the... So you've given us a macro view of why you entered this.
Sure.
But this product specifically, how did that come into being?
Okay, so number one, let me clarify. I am a strong believer of the fact that today India is not looking for healthy snacking, right? India is still a taste-driven market. It will take us at least another 5 to 10 years where the consumer will actively start making decisions on the basis of the health parameters and not taste. I think we are still in an era where the consumer decides on the basis of taste first. Well, it happens to be better for you, great. Your chances of repeating the product are higher, but then why you choose a product is because of taste. Okay, let me also clarify, we are a fun brand. I'm going to break down things into a lot of things which might make it sound a little boring, but then I think this could be educative, right? And hence I'm going to share this. We were very clear that we didn't want to do makhanas and health bars, right? Because very, very small markets, right? We were very clear that we basically wanted to disrupt some of the largest indulgent snacking markets, and the largest 4 categories in the snacking space are basically chips, dips, chocolates, and cookies, right? Biscuits, of course, is large. We were very clear that we wanted to disrupt these 4 categories simply because if these are the largest categories, it means these are also the most loved categories, right? Which means I will never have to go ahead and educate the consumer what a potato chip is, or what a gourmet dip is, or what a chocolate is, right? But if I decided to sell kale chips, if I decided to sell immunity balls, if I decided to sell peanut butter, imagine the amount of consumer education that would need to be done. So we said, this is what consumers want. Let us just give them better versions of the products that are available, right? So that's why we decided to do popped potato chips, because they're technically the fittest version of a potato chip, right? We decided to do international gourmet dips because not only do they give you an international flavor experience, but then all our dips have no artificial colors or preservatives, right? If you look at our chocolates, right, we decided to do dark chocolates, and we do dark chocolate cigars, by the way, right? So we want to make sure that the consumer loves what we do, right? They should fall in love with the taste first. So yeah, that's the thesis. What not many people know is how Tagz as a name was born. And so we came across this very interesting research which basically told us that for millennials, which is me, the most recognizable internet lexicon is the thumb sign of Facebook likes, right? Whereas for Gen Z, intuitively they recognize the hashtag a lot more than any other internet lexicon. So the name was derived from the word hashtag. The reason it is Tagz with a Z is because it's a Gen Z brand, right? The reason we use all these irreverent fonts, the reason that we use matte black and color pop is because, yes, we do sell very interesting snacks, but then we look at ourselves as a music band, possibly, right? We possibly look at ourselves as a mountaineering troupe, right? We possibly look at ourselves as people who are deeply into some of the latest music. So yeah, that's how the name Tagz happened. I was only clear about one thing, that the name needed to be a 2.5 phonetic name, because that is the only way you can make sure that your name is remembered very, very easily. Most of the largest and the finest brands across the world are 2.5 phonetic sounds. So how has life changed after Shark Tank? Yes, of course. At a very early stage, the brand has ended up receiving the kind of eyeballs that it has. I think more than Shark Tank, possibly what we are excited about, and of course sales has shot up, and all of those things. Our factories are bursting at its seams. We are running a 3-shift operation in all our facilities and still not able to keep up with the demand. But I'm not going to bore you with those details. I think the finest outcome that happened out of Shark Tank, in my view, is that we decided to do our consumer stock option plan. immediately after Shark Tank. And we did this because personally, a lot of our consumers started reaching out to us after Shark Tank saying that we also want to invest in the brand, in the company.
Performance marketing, e-commerce marketing, content marketing. Is this the world that you see yourself in? If you dream to work in these roles at Hindustan Unilever Limited, here's your chance. Apply to Altiuni's certificate program in digital marketing with HUL. The participants achieved a return of 12 times the investment with an 80% average salary hike. Hurry up! Apply now to the program from the link in the description. Limited seats available.